Hello and welcome to a special episode of Keep Right On. I'm Brian Dick and today I'm joined not by my regular co-host Alex Dickin, but by a man who will need little introduction to Blues fans. That said, I'll give him one anyway. Welcome Michael Magic Johnson, a centre-back who played 314 times for Birmingham City, scored 18 goals and was an integral member of the side, which not only came so close so often, but did actually return the club to the top flight after a 16-year absence. Michael spent 8 years at St Andrews, won 12 caps for Jamaica, and since hanging up his boots, has managed and coached at international and club level. Thanks for joining us, Jono. Is that all about right? Is that about cover it?
Yeah. It's a nice intro. That is. You made me feel really proud when I listened to some of those numbers. So yeah, fantastic intro.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, so often on these, we speak to guys who played under Trevor and didn't quite get to the Premiership. And obviously you were part of the great side that did make that leap. So, you deserve your flowers for that, if nothing else. John, just so everyone knows, tell us what you're up to right now. Well, not this, you're talking to me right now, but in terms of your career and where you're at with that, please.
Yeah, so I've been in England setup over the last 5 years, coaching and working up and down the pathway, the age groups from the 15s right up to the 21s. Most recently, in the last couple of weeks or so, I've taken on a talent recruitment head of role for the YDP. So it's basically recruiting our best 13 to 16-year-olds in the country and beyond, because it's gone more international now. So I'm leading on that for the FA, which is an exciting step because I've been a coach over the last 10 years since retiring.
That'll bring us on to the many sort of hats you've worn since you've stopped playing football. We'll come on to that later. Just tell us a little bit more about that, though. How does that work? Are you going around academies and making sure that the FA know about all the brightest lights? Yeah. Is that the brief?
Yeah, absolutely. So the role is to try and identify players that potentially long term could come in and play for England. And that's right at the younger ages, starting at under 15s. And so my role is getting out in the evenings, watching games, reporting back into Guy Brazil, who's head of the recruitment, and trying to make sure that our 15s and 16s and 17s are as competitive as they possibly can be. The first 2 years is around talent ID, so identifying players. And then obviously 17s now is under 17s is the first real, tournament year. And so the job is to make sure that the pathway has got the best possible players that we possibly can get. And obviously that's really hard because you're looking at the potential of players. And so the role is just getting up and down the country. There's a host of talent reporters that are operating the breadth of the UK. We've got video technical analysts coming on board now, so they'll be able to get more footage from further afield. And that's just to supply our pathway with the best possible players that qualify to play for England.
You'll have to use your knowledge of the game and the decades you spent in it, because not every 15-year-old looks like Jude Bellingham, do they?
No, and that's the real, the nuances of the role is how do you identify, what do you look for? And then obviously judging that on the kind of character and personality that they're going to have, because it's a long way sometimes when you're identifying a 14-year-old. How can you possibly tell what he's going to look like at 21, 22? And it's so, it's an interesting role, but it's one that I'm really excited about in terms of, going up and down the breadth of the country and having a look at talent and seeing how we can possibly unearth those real gems from the UK.
What's your initial reaction to it, John? Are you finding a few unpolished diamonds? Are you surprised at the talent level?
Yeah, I think that the game itself has definitely moved in the last 10, 15 years in terms of quality. You look at the pictures at the academies, particularly the Cat 1 academies. You look at the coaching, the kind of finance that the Premier League have put into the EPPP. And you look at even at the EFL, the kind of golden nuggets, the stars what are in the EFL. We only have to look at our very own Jude Bellingham, who came from an EFL club. but the quality of the EFL club, because of the kind of funding pots available, have managed to unearth talent because of the pitches, because of the coaching resources, all these things that go into what makes our beautiful game.
You must be at a game every night, are you, virtually?
Yeah, I'm actually just about to leave to go down and watch an under-15 game at Luton. And so, you're constantly on the road.
Yeah.
You're constantly working with your talent reporters. There's a group of talent reporters which cover the UK. So their role is to report into the FA to me around the findings, particularly in that YDP, that 13 to 16 category.
Yeah, interesting. We'll come on to your pathway to your current role in a bit, Michael. But obviously, many people, all people watching this will be just as interested in your Blues career. So I'm going to look back, having looked a little bit forward at the moment. I'm going to look back at the day Barry Fry made you the 517th signing of the summer of 1995, I think it was, wasn't it?
That's right.
You came from Notts County, one of 47 players who played in that first season back in what was then the First Division, now the Championship. Yeah. What are your early memories of moving to Blues with Barry there in that first season?
Well, I always remember because it was early hours in the morning. Barry called me. I'm talking like, at 2 o'clock in the morning one when, everybody should be asleep. But Birmingham suffered a defeat and he couldn't sleep. And so Barry being Barry couldn't wait for first thing in the morning. He called me at 2 a.m. and just said, look, I woke up groggily and was like, who's this? And it was Barry. And he just said, look, really sorry to disturb you, but we need you, big man. You fancy coming down in the first thing in the morning? And so I literally went back to bed, got my stuff together, and at 7 a.m. Went down to speak to Birmingham City. And he told me the plans. He told me that, it's a big club, which obviously I knew, and that how he'd see me fitting in. And then I managed to speak to my agent. Agent flew down, and the very same day we signed a contract, which ultimately, turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life.
So you went to bed a Notts County player and woke up a Birmingham City player, pretty much.
Can only happen underneath Barry Fry, that, by the way. But yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth of the story, Brian.
And to be fair, as I said, there weren't 500 new arrivals that summer, but there were plenty. They were getting on for 20, and as I said, Barry played 47 players in that first season back in.
Right, I always remember that we used to have a first team, then a reserve team, then we used to play in the senior league, the third team. So even though Birmingham City had 3 teams of professionals, there was still surplus for a 4th team.
Wow.
There was players that weren't getting a game. Such was the magnitude and the size of the squad. You joke, but it was literally like when you signed for the club, you were wearing shirt number 54 or 56, something ridiculous like that. Such was the amount of players that we had.
Yeah, in an era when it was 1 to 11, and that was pretty much it, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. It wasn't like what we see now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That said, albeit the season was just about underway, and you sort of flew in from Notts County, you played over 30 games in your first season, and only 2 players made more starts. So Barry was as good to his word, but then he left the following May, didn't he? After your first season.
Yeah,
and then it was a fairly quick coronation of Trevor returning to the club. Were you worried about the fact the guy that had signed you had moved on?
Yeah, because and I'm sure you'll probably move on to this, but when Trevor came, he was promised money, which obviously resulted in the signings of Steve Bruce, Gary Adbert, God bless him, R.I.P. rest in peace. There was Barry Horn, there was Paul Furlong. So there was a number of big signings, obviously 2 which were playing centre-back, Gary and Steve.
Yeah.
And Trevor called me in, God bless his soul as well, by the way, and literally said, you may be surplus to requirements here because the club's going in a new direction. And we brought in Gary Ablett, we brought in Steve Bruce. They'd also brought in Gary Breen. And so there was a real coming together of what was supposed to be this new defensive centre-back partnership, which didn't include me.
you did beat off the competition, didn't you? You know, again, I don't think there were many seasons when you made less than 30 appearances. Indeed, over your 8 seasons, you as I said, you made 300 appearances in that time. So you clearly did sort of see off all comers. How did you do that? How did you convince Trevor that that all these high price tag, high profile names might have been signed, but it was actually Michael Johnson, the guy that was already at the club, that should be the one starting centre back so often?
I've always been, Brian, one from a career, and even now, not one to mope. And if I need to go round the hard way, then I'll do it. And so, with that being said, I always knew that I'd get a chance. And the minute I get a chance, it's up to me to prove your worth. And that means you've got to obviously be ready. And so, I managed to stay in real good shape, stayed in the gym and worked really hard. And when I played reserves, I'd always play to the top of my potential. I never like just bobbed it off. I always, gave, as everybody would know, your all. And so when the opportunity came, I always thought, if I get in, then whoever's left out is going to have a really hard time trying to displace me. And that's what happened. I managed to get in underneath Trevor, and what turned out to be you could be on your way resulted in a 5-year contract and a Player of the Year being dished out. So it really turned full circle.
And that's credit to Trevor, isn't it? He didn't. He might have had his preconceived ideas, but he was willing to see the evidence in front of his own eyes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing but fond memories and a real good time with the Trevor. I mean, what he was honest with me. He told me, and that's all you can ask from any management is to be honest and straightforward and upfront. But he also gave me the opportunity to change that. And when that happened, he wasn't stubborn and going, well, this is what I said earlier, I've got to stick to my ways. No, he offered me a 5-year contract. And so he honoured the opportunity of me turning around, working hard. He rewarded that. And so, I've got a lot of time, a lot of fun memories of my time underneath Trevor. And thankfully, obviously the club got back to the Premier League as we now know it. The sad thing for me was that we didn't manage to do it underneath Trevor, but he was a large part of why that was so successful.
Yeah, you've preempted my next question there. Actually, there were 3 playoff campaigns, 3 very painful semi-final defeats. No luck in the cup competitions either. You get to Cardiff and the Worthington Cup final, and referees' decisions go against you. It just seemed that you just couldn't quite break through that glass ceiling. Is that fair? What did you feel about the time?
And this is what I think. I think when you look at Trevor's record, it was a really good one. We always got there, which means we won a certain amount of games to get there. It was just always that last step. I remember the game at Watford. Obviously, penalty shootout. I remember the Barnsley one, the Preston one, which is such a painful one.
Preston one, it still stands.
Yeah, with the penalty shootout, and we were winning right into the last minute. And there was always painful moments. I remember the penalty shootout with Chris Holland, who was going to take a penalty, and for whatever reason, the staff decided that they wanted Kevin Poole, the goalkeeper, to take it. And so it knocked the stuffing out of Chris Holland, and obviously Paulie whacks it in the top corner. They score theirs. So guess who drives up next? The person that was just told the goalkeeper is going to take the penalty in front of you.
Yeah.
And he goes on to miss. And that's the whole season. The whole of your efforts over a season just done. And that just kept happening. And, it was a difficult time in terms of would we ever do it underneath Birmingham City, underneath Trevor?
Yeah. Did it change massively? Obviously, you got there within a few months of Steve coming in. Did it change massively when Steve came in?
I think there was a real impetus to get over the line with Steve. I think that the players, it was one of those where I think Steve come in and we realised that it's a now or never situation, because more than likely, Steve's going to come with his own ideas. At the end of the season, we might not all be together, which proved to be the case. And so this is probably the final chance And I think it was conversations like that that the team really pulled together to really put on, what was a really good performance at the Millennium Stadium.
Yeah, a lot of players from that team or that squad talk about the squad effectively running itself. Dominant characters. Making sure the standards were high, and Steve was just almost, not to belittle his contribution, but was almost had the skills just to say, you go on, boys, you take it forward. Is that right? Was that your experience of it?
100%. I don't think I've ever played in a team full of so many leaders. We probably wasn't the most, pleasing on the eye team to watch back then. But what you had was 5 or 6, and I mean proper leaders, proper men who were prepared to go to battle. And I will never forget Martin O'Connor in the final there, who literally played on one leg.
Yeah.
You got people like Jeff Horsfield added to that. You had Martin Granger added to that. You had Nicky Eden. There was Percy. There was myself. There was such a richness of leadership that got. There's no surprise to me why year in year out we were so close, and we probably needed that little bit of opening of the door. That little bit of talent, so to speak. But over a period of 46 games, through some tough winter seasons, to do that, what we did consistently for 4 or 5 years, speaks volumes of the kind of squad that we had. People talk about the Man City team now, and quite rightly so, that they're constantly driving standards, constantly there. We were a poorer version, obviously nowhere near as good as Man City, but what I mean by that is we were constantly there, championship season after championship season, which, if anybody knows the championship, to do that repetitively is a tough ask in the championship, with good teams coming down, big teams coming down, and we were constantly there for a good 4 or 5 year period.
Was that day in Cardiff the playoff final and finally getting into the Premiership? Was that the highlight of your Blues career, or would it be something that maybe is less?
Yeah, that would be the highlight, without a shadow of doubt. You mentioned it, just before that. The club had been in the Premier League, the top flight of English football, never been in the Premier League, and so for that squad of players, myself included, to return that back to Birmingham was something that I'd hold close to my heart. Obviously the club's evolved and moved on since then, but to be one of those that put that first brick back in after so many years was a really satisfying moment for us to achieve that. And obviously the manner in which we did it with Darren Carter, the young boy coming through at Birmingham, to see all those fat smiling blue noses that had gone through so much heartache year in, year out, and to just celebrate that when we got back to Birmingham, it was just a real special moment.
Obviously, the missing piece was a 17-year-old academy player, wasn't it? Clearly. Who, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Of your time at Blues, who would you say would be your favourite teammate? Either, off the pitch socially, or, someone to play with?
There's two. I can't, one of my best friends who I still speak with, and, I'm godfather to his kids, is Paul Devlin. So me and Dev still have a close relationship. Even last year, we went to go and see Olivier Tebley over in France. Spent the weekend there in his vineyard. So that speaks volumes to the kind of friendship groups that we still have. And then the other one is Benno. Me and Benno used to travel every day from the East Midlands down the M42. And if anybody knows Benno, there's never you laugh straight away. There's never a dull moment in and around Benno. So, and he's still involved in the game. So, two terrific friends that I hold really dear.
There's a lot of car time with Benno, to be fair. You didn't play very much when the team got to the Premiership. Would that be your biggest regret?
Yeah, and I think Steve has quite openly spoke about, that was probably one of his regrets, is that he split up that team too quickly. because the team had real leadership strengths, and we always knew the first season was going to be a tough season. Anybody in the Premier League who goes up through the playoffs, it's a tough season, as I found out afterwards with Derby County. It's the way it goes. But probably, that was probably one of my real regrets, is that I wasn't, not through any fault of my own, it was just the way football is, that, Steve wanted to go a new direction. He thought he needed a lot more in terms of trying to stay up in the Premier League, and I wasn't part of his plans. So, the opportunity in the January transfer window came for me to leave, and then it was a real burden because I'd spent 8.5 years at a club that, I still call, it's a club very close to my heart, because I spent so many years there, seen good and bad times there, made new friendship groups there, met the mother of my children there, and so there were so many happy memories. And then to leave all that was a real pull.
A couple of loan spells away from Derby with Sheffield Wednesday and Notts County, and then you eventually went back to where it all started before hanging your boots up in 2009. Is that right?
Yeah, it was full circle. So I started at Notts County, and you're right. I went to, when I left Birmingham, I was 30 years old, so I did 5 years at Derby County. Managed to get to the Premier League with Derby County as captain, which was really satisfying. And again, similar thing happened where we get to the Premier League, and we had a tough season. I know it's on record about the amount of points that Derby County had that year, and there was numerous factors for that reason. But then anyway, that January I went to Sheffield Wednesday for the remainder of that season. I loved it at Sheffield Wednesday underneath Brian Laws. And then I knew Notts County was struggling. At the start of that season, they were struggling. And so I ended up moving to Notts County and had another 2 years, successful years. And that was my first opportunity after retiring to go into some kind of coaching, which was with the under-18s.
In the time since you've hung up your boots, I know you've worn, as I said earlier, a number of hats, haven't you? Talk us through your insight into what it's like to staying in the game as a retired footballer. It's
difficult. I think a lot of lads have openly spoke about it's kind of like a mourning. It's a grief. I see it so many times with not just footballers, but athletes. I've seen it recently with Andy Murray, who's had to hang up his boots, and the tears what were unleashed on centre court. And it's a difficult thing to come to terms with the day that you retire, because you've always had the onus of being a football player. You've always had some structure to your week, to your Saturday afternoons. All of a sudden, that's done, and there's not much preparation for that. So when I actually retired, it was kind of like, whoa, what do I do now? Yeah. And that took me probably a good 18 months to really come to terms with that it's over. What do you do next? The fortunate thing for me was, even in that process, I was in and around a club that I knew well, Notts County, and they gave me an opportunity to jump straight back in at the under-18s as a coach. But not many footballers that retire get that opportunity. So it's a really, really difficult time in your life when you start to realise, finding out a little bit more about who are you. And yeah, so for me, it was a difficult one, but thanks for Notts County, I managed to transition into some coaching role.
In the time I've known you, you've done other stuff than coaching. You've done football directorship degrees and things like that, haven't you? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, I've done the LMA diploma. I've got 2 master's degrees. One as a sporting director. I did that with UEFA. I've got all my FA coaching courses. I've done all the UEFA A license, pro license, academies managers, LMA diplomas. I've just completed another graduate award with the LMA. So one thing I've always been, Brian, is somebody that is keen on education. There's no getting away from where we are in the current platform in terms of when you look across the diversity within football. It's great to see, less so in leadership positions. So if I wanted to be a leader in any way, shape or form, I quite quickly learned that, your career is not enough. What you now need to do is go back to school and get yourself qualified so that you can stand there and really shout from the rooftops, as opposed to thinking this game, it owes you something, which it doesn't.
Almost need to be overqualified or the most qualified man in the room at times.
Yeah, you have to be. You have to make sure that there's no stone unturned.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, just as a player, for me as a coach, manager, which I've been fortunate to manage, what I'm not afraid of is hard work. What I'm not afraid is to go and get my hands dirty, which quite rightly so, you need to, because it's all right being a footballer for so many years, but to be a coach and manager is a different skill altogether.
Yeah.
So, I quickly realised that not only might there be some challenges, but I also need to understand how do you know your expertise, but how do you deliver it? How do you make it land so that the players can understand it?
At 51 though, to been retired for going on for 15, 16 years now and still in the game, you must be very proud of the fact, because it's easy to get out of football and very difficult to get back in it, isn't it? I'm
really proud of it. Everybody knows it's a difficult environment. It's a really challenging. I was speaking to someone today where football, you can be chasing a position and then you get your position and then all of a sudden you're there to be chased. And so it never stops. You've got to keep moving, educational wise, learning wise. The minute that you stop, I think it's the minute that you're in danger. And so for me, it's been fantastic to see. I'm 51 now, and I still believe I'm right at the cutting edge of football. I'm right at the top of, with the FA in terms of recruitment. I'm still coaching at these age groups as well. And so for me, I take real pride in the fact that, you still got that zest to go out and be the best that I can be.
You've coached with England 21s, England 18s as well, haven't you? Has there been a player that you've really thought, wow, there's some real talent there, or that stands out, that's a bit different? Yeah, I mean, there's numerous players that I come across, and obviously, there's two that you guys will be well aware. Obviously, the Birmingham brothers, which have been, a fantastic pair to work with, as is JJ, who's come through. Sadly opted to go for Wales. We've had Jay Stansfield. There's been a plethora of blue players that have come down and done really well. George Ford, another one, by the way. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. We wish him 2 years of fitness, don't we, to get his career going in the right direction. What have you made of Jay? He's got a little bit of, I don't know if spite is the right word, but he's got something in him, a little terrier sort of attitude in him, hasn't he? Yeah, I mean, I worked with him at the 20s, and then quite quickly he moved up to the 21s for an opportunity. As you said, he's got a little bit of spice in him, and you want that. You don't want somebody who doesn't come with an edge, as long as it's controlled in the right and channeled in the right frame of mind. What he is, though, is a fantastic finisher. Yeah. And he's somebody that I can see from afar that the Blues fans have took to their heart. So, and obviously Chris Davies must think the word of him to go and get him. And so I think this boy's in for a bright future. A lot of pressure, that price tag. He'll say that the price tag's not his fault; it's not on him. But it does come with an expectation, not only individually but collectively, that he's got to score the goals that have got to get Blues back up. Yeah, that's what, and I'm sure deep down he has belief in himself. I'm sure he'll be looking at himself and expecting to deliver. As you said, the price tag is the price tag. But I'm sure, with the support that he's got, the manager which he's got, and I think a lot of Chris, I think he's a top manager, and top coach, top guy. I'm sure with somebody like that around him, that he will be able to deliver. And what have you made of the change at Birmingham City in the last 18 months? There's been a lot of change, obviously, a lot of changes to the infrastructure, which needed to happen, let's be honest. Yeah. The club has been through the mill over the last 5-10 years. Uncertainties, there's so much uncertainty, so much doubt, that it's been really hard for the club to gather any real momentum. So it's great to see the direction it's going in. It's great to see the new owners come in and take the wheel, a really good manager who's coming in. You can see what's happening at the ground. You can see the plans.
for Birmingham City. I've always thought, Birmingham City, who's got the name Birmingham, if they really believe in the club itself, it can go on to be, right up there in the Premier League and be a stalwart in terms of a club in the top flight. So really, really excited about what's going to happen with the club over the next 5 years or so. But we've got to get this year right.
Yeah, they shouldn't they? They should get through League One.
They started off like a house on fire, unbeaten so far. So, you don't want to tempt fate, but it's looking good.
There is no should in football, is there?
You said that, not me.
Brilliant. Jono, thank you very much for your time. Everybody who's been listening or watching along, thank you very much for your time. And I'll say keep right on, but I'm sure Jono wants to pass his own keep right on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic to be able to have this conversation with yourselves and really connect back with so many fans, friends, family, which I call the Blue Noses family. Whenever I come down there, I always get a great reception. And so I'm really thankful for so many Blue Noses that have followed me throughout my career and beyond. And obviously wishing everybody all the best for a successful season. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon when I come down to the ground.
Keep right on from both of us. Thanks, Johnny.
Keep right on.